Welcome back to this explainer. Today, we're diving straight into one of the most intense, high-stakes periods in biblical history, 1 Samuel chapters 22 and 23. Think about this for a second. David has just gone from a desperate man faking insanity just to stay alive to a fugitive king literally running for his life. We're going to see exactly how he navigates this extreme transformation and learns to rely deeply on divine guidance.
Here's our roadmap for today. 1. The Cave of Adullam. 2. Paranoia and the Priests. 3. Seeking God at Keilah. 4. A Covenant of Friendship. And 5. The Rock of Escape. Let's jump right in.
Section 1. The Cave of Adullam.
So, let's trace this wild physical journey. David starts out seeking refuge at the Cave of Adullam, but then he actually moves his parents to Moab. Now, why Moab? Well, because his great-grandmother, Ruth, was a Moabitess. It's a brilliant strategic play, leveraging his family tree just to keep his loved ones safe. But, he doesn't stay comfortable for long. The prophet Gad instructs him to return to the forest of Hereth in Judah. Right away, we see that divine guidance, not just basic military safety, is what dictates his path.
He doesn't stay alone for long either. But his new recruits, they weren't exactly an elite special ops team. Word spreads, and 400 men gather to him. But these were men who were distressed, heavily in debt, and just totally discontented with life. It's a ragtag crew for sure, yet it perfectly demonstrates a recurring theme we see in these texts. God often raises up broken, ordinary people and transforms them into mighty leaders. His strength is made perfect in human weakness.
Section 2. Paranoia and the Priests.
Now, this is where we see a really stark contrast in leadership. On one side, King Saul's sin-induced paranoia is completely destroying his judgment. I mean, he accuses his own servants of treason and ends up ordering the execution of innocent priests just because they gave David some bread. But on the other side, we have David. When he hears of this massive tragedy, he doesn't spin the narrative or shift the blame. He humbly accepts responsibility, acknowledging his role, and immediately protects the sole survivor, Abiathar. That right there is the absolute hallmark of true, accountable leadership.
And this horrific event forces us to pause and ask a really heavy question that the source text tackles head-on. Why would a sovereign God permit such a tragic massacre of his own priests at Nob?
The standoff here is just unbelievably intense. Saul actually orders his own guards to slaughter the priests, but the guards righteously refuse. They fear God way more than they fear a paranoid human king. But then enter Doeg the Edomite. With zero hesitation, he steps up and ruthlessly murders 85 innocent priests, and then goes on to wipe out the entire surrounding city. It's just unthinkable. So how do we process that? I mean, it brings us face to face with the classic problem of evil. Sometimes evil is permitted to reveal the full, destructive reality of human rebellion. It's a really harsh reminder that believers aren't magically exempt from suffering in a fallen world. Yet even in this profound darkness, God preserves his plan. The lone survivor Abiathar escapes with a priestly ephod, ensuring the true priesthood survives to guide David. Through it all, God remains absolutely sovereign.
Section 3. Seeking God at Keilah.
All right, so David gets word that the city of Keilah is starving because the Philistines are violently raiding their food supply. So how did David respond to this crisis? Keep in mind, he's already running for his life from Saul. Why on earth would he invite more trouble?
Instead of just relying on his military gut instinct, David follows this really fascinating sequence. After the attack happens, he immediately inquires of the Lord. He gets a green light. But his men are absolutely terrified. They're already in hiding in Judah, so why risk exposure? Notice David's humility here, though. He doesn't force them. He actually goes back and asks God a second time. Only when God explicitly guarantees victory does David move in, strike a mighty blow, and save the city.
This gives us a massive takeaway about how we interpret our circumstances, right? Saul hears David is in a walled city and presumptuously thinks, God has delivered him to me. Saul totally confuses an easy opportunity with God's blessing. But David does the exact opposite. He tests the circumstances. He asks God if the very people he just saved will betray him, and God says yes, they will hand him over. David relies on divine revelation, never just on human gratitude.
Section 4. A Covenant of Friendship.
So fleeing Keilah into the wilderness of Ziph, David gets a total surprise visitor out of nowhere, Saul's son, Jonathan. The text notes that Jonathan strengthened his hand in God. But what's the actual significance of this covenant they make out there in the woods?
Jonathan basically gives us the ultimate blueprint for genuine biblical friendship here. Just look at these traits in action.
There's mutual trust as they renew their covenant. There's incredible submission to God. Jonathan completely rejects his own father's toxic ambition so he can align with God's sovereign plan instead. And there is radical, sacrificial love. Jonathan literally yields his right to the future throne to lift David up, telling him, "You shall be king, and I shall be next to you." That is just amazing.
Section 5. The Rock of Escape.
This is where the tension reaches its absolute peak in the wilderness of Mahan. The locals betray David's hideout. Saul organizes this massive, highly coordinated pincer movement, completely encircling David's men on the mountain. From a strategic standpoint, it's over. There is zero human means of escape. They are entirely trapped.
But right as capture is basically a sure thing, a messenger sprints in with urgent news. The Philistines are invading. Saul is forced to abandon the hunt immediately to defend the nation, allowing David to slip away to a place they literally named the Rock of Escape. God used an ordinary historical event for an impossible rescue, and it leaves us with this provocative final thought. Just like David on that mountain, will you trust God's perfect timing when you find yourself completely surrounded by impossible circumstances?